The warm Filipino morning breeze carried the familiar aroma of sampaguita and the distant noise of jeepneys navigating through the narrow streets of General Santos City. A man of medium stature, wearing a simple blue polo shirt and worn cap, walked slowly through streets he knew like the palm of his hand. His steps were measured, deliberate, as if each stone of the sidewalk brought back fragments of a life that seemed to have happened in another century. Manny Pacquiao had returned to his hometown without fanfare, without entourage, without the cameras that normally followed him everywhere. He needed this moment of solitude, this intimate reconnection with his roots, away from the spotlights of Manila and the expectations of millions of Filipinos who saw him as a national hero. The weight of fame sometimes became suffocating, and moments like this were rare and precious. The streets had changed over the years. New buildings had emerged where there were once only empty fields, but the essence remained the same. Children played barefoot in the yards of simple houses, women hung clothes in the sun while chatting over low fences, and the smell of adobo and cooked rice escaped from open windows. It was this simple and authentic world that had shaped the man he had become. Few passers-by recognized him that morning. Some looked twice, frowning as if trying to remember where they had seen that familiar face, but most continued on their way without suspecting that one of the world's greatest sports legends was walking silently among them. Manny preferred it this way. These moments of anonymity reminded him of who he really was beneath all the titles and achievements. The destination of his morning walk was quite specific: the elementary school where he had taken his first steps in the world of formal education, decades ago. He hadn't visited the place in years, but felt an inexplicable need to be there, as if his soul was calling him back to the place where it all began, before fame, before wealth, when he was just a poor boy with dreams bigger than his reality. When he finally spotted the gate of Saavedra Saway Elementary School, Manny felt his heart tighten in his chest. What was once a modest but dignified structure now presented itself as a decomposing concrete skeleton. The walls were stained by years of uncontrolled tropical rains, the roof had enormous holes through which vegetation had begun to grow, and the windows without glass looked like empty eyes of an abandoned child. The rusty iron gate creaked in the wind, hanging from a broken hinge. Weeds had taken over what was once the school playground, growing wild among pieces of cracked concrete and accumulated trash. The smell of dampness and abandonment was almost unbearable, mixed with the acrid odor of sewage flowing from some broken pipe nearby. Manny carefully pushed the gate and entered the grounds that held so many memories of his childhood. His hands trembled slightly as he touched the peeling walls, imagining how the neighborhood children could be being deprived of the education he himself had received there, however simple it had been. The silence was deafening, interrupted only by the constant dripping of rainwater accumulated in the roof holes. The classrooms were empty and in ruins. Broken desks were scattered across the floor, covered with dust and animal droppings. The blackboards had disappeared or were completely illegible, covered by graffiti and vandalism. The floor, once smooth cement where he had played during recess, was now uneven and dangerous, with holes that could hurt any child who tried to play there. A feeling of deep sadness overcame Manny as he absorbed the extent of the deterioration. This wasn't just an abandoned school, it was the symbol of interrupted dreams, of generations of children who were being deprived of the opportunity to learn and grow. He remembered how many of his classmates had dropped out of school due to lack of conditions, and now saw that the situation had become even worse than in his time. Sitting on a piece of concrete that was once part of a school desk, Manny closed his eyes and allowed memories to flow freely. He could almost hear the echo of children's laughter that once filled those now silent corridors, could visualize the dedicated teachers who, even with limited resources, did their best to plant seeds of knowledge in young minds hungry to learn. He remembered how he arrived at school every morning with an empty stomach, but with eyes shining with curiosity. His family didn't have money for a decent snack, but he never let hunger prevent his studies. Often, teachers noticed his situation and discreetly shared part of their own food, a gesture of kindness he never forgot, and that taught him the value of compassion. The lessons learned between those walls weren't just academic. It was there he learned about respect, about working as a team, about not giving up even when circumstances seemed impossible. The teachers, even earning miserable salaries, treated each student as if they were precious, believing in potential that many didn't even know they possessed. This belief had been fundamental in shaping his determination. Manny remembered one teacher in particular, Mr. Santos, who used to say that education was the only inheritance that no one could steal. He spoke about how each child, no matter how poor their family was, had the right to dream big and work to achieve those dreams. These words had echoed in his mind during the most difficult moments of his boxing career, when everyone said he was too small, too weak, too poor to reach the top. The irony of the situation didn't go unnoticed. He had become exactly what Mr. Santos had said was possible. Someone who had overcome all limitations imposed by poverty through education, hard work, and determination. But now, seeing the school where it all began in ruins, he realized he had a greater responsibility than just being a champion. He had the power to be the change that community desperately needed. Rising from the piece of concrete where he had sat to reminisce, Manny took his phone from his pocket and began making a series of calls. His voice was calm but determined as he spoke with architects, engineers, and contractors from Manila. He wasn't just thinking about a superficial renovation. He was visualizing a complete transformation that would honor the memory of the teachers who had invested in him and offer future generations something even better than what he had had. During the calls, he walked around the school grounds, mentally noting every detail that would need to be addressed. It wasn't just about fixing what was broken. He wanted to create something truly special. A school that would have science laboratories, a well-equipped library, covered sports court, cafeteria where children could have nutritious meals, and air-conditioned classrooms to face the tropical heat. What motivated him most wasn't just nostalgia, but the realization of how many neighborhood children were growing up without access to quality education. He had visited many countries throughout his career and seen how education transformed entire societies. He knew that each child who received a solid education could become an agent of change in their family and community, breaking cycles of poverty that persisted for generations. Manny also decided he wouldn't make any public announcement about the project until it was completed. He wanted the transformation to be a genuine surprise for the community, something that would appear as an unexpected gift in their lives. He had learned over the years that actions spoke louder than words, and wanted his gesture to be pure, without any suspicion of personal marketing or political gain. While finalizing the initial details over the phone, he looked once more at the ruins around him and made a silent promise. This school wouldn't just be rebuilt, it would be transformed into a beacon of hope for the entire region. He would use his influence, his resources, and his network of contacts to ensure the project was executed with the highest quality, creating a legacy that would endure far beyond his own life. 3 weeks after his visit to the ruined school, trucks began arriving silently at dawn at Saavedra Saway Elementary School. Neighborhood residents woke up to the sound of heavy machinery and workers' voices organizing equipment. Curiosity took over the community when they realized this wasn't another empty political promise, but a real and well-funded project. The first workers to arrive were specialists in controlled demolition and land clearing. They worked with precision and care that impressed neighbors accustomed to poorly executed public works. Each piece of debris was carefully removed, the land was leveled and prepared with modern techniques, and even the harmful vegetation was removed in a way that preserved the larger trees that could provide shade in the future playground. What most caught the community's attention was the quality of materials being delivered. These weren't the cheap, low-quality materials normally used in public works, but premium products imported from Manila and even from other countries. High-resistance concrete, first-class bricks, modern electrical systems, superior quality PVC plumbing. Everything indicated that someone with considerable resources was seriously investing in the project. Neighborhood children gathered daily to observe the construction progress, their eyes shining with a mixture of curiosity and hope. Many of them had grown up seeing only abandonment and deterioration around them, so witnessing something being built instead of destroyed was almost magical. Parents also showed intrigue, speculating about who could be behind such an investment in their humble community. The workers were instructed to maintain discretion about the project, but their dedication and professionalism spoke for themselves. They worked long hours, even on weekends, as if they were building something much more important than a common school. The construction supervisor, an experienced man from Manila, commented to his colleagues that in 30 years of career, he had never worked on a project where the client cared so much about every detail, from the quality of materials to the workers' well-being. As weeks passed and the structure of the new school began to take shape, something unexpected happened in the community. Neighbors, inspired by the mysterious project that was transforming their neighborhood, began organizing to contribute in their own ways. Families started cleaning and painting their houses. Local merchants offered discounts to construction workers, and a sense of collective pride began to emerge. Neighborhood women organized to prepare snacks and fresh water for workers during the hottest days. Retired men offered their experience in small repairs and finishing work, working side by side with hired professionals. It was as if the entire community had awakened from a long sleep, rediscovering their capacity to dream and work together for a common goal. Children, in particular, demonstrated contagious enthusiasm. They began studying more seriously at home, practicing math while observing construction measurements, improving their reading by trying to decipher architectural plans they occasionally saw. Parents reported that their children constantly talked about what it would be like to study at the new school, creating a collective expectation that energized the entire neighborhood. Small local businesses began to prosper due to the movement generated by the construction. Dona Maria's snack bar, which previously could barely sell a few snacks per day, now served dozens of workers daily. Su Joao's barbershop saw his clientele double, as construction employees needed to stay presentable. It was as if a virtuous circle of economic development had been initiated by that single construction project. Most impressive was observing how the community's collective self-esteem was being restored. For years, residents had grown accustomed to neglect and abandonment, developing a resignation that prevented them from dreaming of improvements. But now, seeing that someone considered their community worthy of significant investment, they began to believe again in their own value and growth potential. On Inauguration Day, hundreds of people gathered in front of the transformed school. What was once a building in ruins now stood as a modern and welcoming structure, with colorful walls, large windows that let natural light flood the environments, and a safe playground where children were already playing with contagious joy. The community was celebrating, but still no one knew who had been the benefactor responsible for that miracle. When a man of medium stature, wearing a simple white polo shirt, climbed onto the small improvised stage, many thought he was just another local politician wanting to take credit for the work. But when he removed his cap and smiled timidly at the crowd, a murmur of recognition began to spread among those present. It was Manny Pacquiao, the national idol, standing before them without pomp or circumstance. Tears began to flow down the faces of those present when Manny, with his soft and humble voice, explained that he had discovered the state of the school a few weeks earlier and decided to act silently. He spoke about his own memories as a student at that same institution, about the teachers who believed in him when few did, and about how education had been fundamental to all subsequent achievements in his life. What most moved the audience was the simplicity and authenticity of his words. Manny didn't make any political speech, didn't promote any personal agenda, didn't mention his boxing achievements. He simply expressed his gratitude for the education he had received there and his hope that future generations would have even better opportunities. He spoke as a son of the community who had returned to give back what he had received. When he finished speaking, The crowd remained silent for a few seconds, processing the magnitude of the gesture. Then, an explosion of applause and tears took over the place. Parents held their children, teachers embraced each other, and a feeling of deep gratitude and hope hung in the air. It was one of those rare moments where an entire community felt truly seen, valued, and loved by someone who could be anywhere in the world, but chose to be there with them. 6 months after the inauguration, Saavedra Saway Elementary School had become more than an educational institution. It was a symbol of hope and transformation that inspired communities throughout the country. Enrollment had tripled, with children coming from distant neighborhoods to study at the school that offered international quality education at no cost to needy families. Students' academic results improved dramatically, with many children demonstrating talents that had remained hidden due to lack of adequate opportunities. The school library, equipped with computers and internet access, had become a community learning center where not only children, but also adults came to study and train. The cafeteria ensured that no child studied hungry, breaking a historical barrier that limited academic achievement. The impact of Manny's gesture extended far beyond the school's boundaries. His story inspired other successful Filipinos to invest in their communities of origin, creating a national movement of social responsibility and giving back. Businessmen, artists, and athletes began financing similar projects in their hometowns, multiplying the transformative effect throughout the archipelago. For Manny, following the school's progress became one of the greatest joys of his life. He visited the institution regularly, always discreetly, talking with teachers about students' needs and ensuring that teaching quality remained at a high level. Seeing the sparkle in children's eyes when they talked about their dreams and ambitions gave him a satisfaction that no boxing title had provided. Most important of all was the virtuous cycle that had been created. Many of the school students, inspired by their benefactor's story, began to dream not only of personal success, but of ways to give back to their communities in the future. They understood that true success wasn't measured only by individual achievements, but by the ability to lift others up with you. The school had become more than a place of learning. It was a cradle of future leaders who carried in their hearts the values of humility, generosity, and social responsibility that Manny Pacquiao had demonstrated through his silent but powerful actions. If you like this kind of story, leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the next videos.